Hello everyone and welcome to the last part of a presentation about steamships and railways on literature. And for the last part we have to talk about the steampunk genre, a genre that it was directly influenced by this time period. So we must discuss what's this steampunk genre all about, and how does this universe works. We must discuss the influence that it had on other works and how this genre came to existence. We will talk about everything. So, first and foremost, we must understand the steampunk universe. So, the first thing is that steam is the source of most energy in the world. Most things are powered by steam. Most machines, buildings, the locomotives, the boats, steam reigns supreme in this universe. And even though it is set on the 19th century to the early 20th century, the steam technology is so advanced that it can be compared to modern technology. The steam technology in this universe has reached heights that science doesn't know if it's actually possible. But if it is possible, it doesn't really matter because steam technology is considered outdated nowadays. But in the Industrial Revolution era, in the 19th century in specific, it was considered the future. People freaked out about this technology. And the steampunk universe consists in: what if this technology kept evolving, that we had submarines, automobiles, airships, things that didn't exist in the 19th century. Those things weren't invented yet. But what if the future came earlier? And the future came in the steam universe. That's what steampunk is all about, basically. And that's the basis for everything. So, we must talk about the aesthetic as well. The aesthetic of this period, since it's based on the Victorian era and the 19th century in general, it takes use also from the French Belle Epoque and the segregation wars that happened in the United States. Everything in the context of the 19th century. So that's everything comes from here. Guns, clothes, automobiles that began to exist in that era, in this universe. Everything is steampunk inspired. I have some pictures here of the static. You can see it is an old train, not a modern one, but this is these are some passengers. And when I talk about how the technology evolved in this era, how steam was supreme, this is the train, and those are the passengers. We don't have trains like this, even nowadays. So that's what I mean when I'm saying that it pushes the boundaries of science and what it can be done with steam. There is a steam locomotive, a huge one. That's a sign of how things evolve. And it still has the setting of the era. On the second picture, there's a lady holding a futuristic gun, futuristic for the period. But you can see it's very inspired by that era. And another thing is that it has a huge emphasis on gears appearing, and most mechanical components you can see here on the gear. It has tons of mechanical components on the train appearing as part of the style. On this third picture we have Steampunk City, which is a topic we have to discuss here. Which crowded and overpopulated cities are a big theme there, because of its relation to the Industrial Revolution. It was an effect of this time period. And so, this is very present in the steampunk universe. You can see it's a very different city for what we're used to seeing, and it's very reminiscent of that area that we are seeing, the Victorian era, the 19th century. But you can see some airships flying around here, everything, lots of industries. It's the reimagination of the future in the 19th century. And we have in this last picture a steampunk workshop that can be used for crafting stuff. Also very different from what we have nowadays, even though it is just as technically advanced as we have stuff nowadays. It is also very different from the stuff we had at the 19th century. And that's the beauty of steampunk. We are living in the 19th century, but everything is much more advanced. Look at this other picture. It's another steampunk city, and we have airships flying, a huge airship flying. I think this one is also a boat. Sometimes they combine boats and planes into the same thing. Because, well, that's how the technology evolved. So about the origin of the origin of the steampunk genre. The term first appeared in 1987 in this novel made by Kevin Jeter, where he compared his idea of a Victorian fiction to the cyberpunk universe that was already established at the time. And for authors like, I have this one right here, Blade Runner, which is, I would say, the most famous steampunk work. There are some others, Ghost in the Shell. We have the cyberpunk video game that is huge now. But this movie was the first one to, this book was a cult icon for sure. But it has that reimagination thing when he compared. And some say that the first appearance of that steampunk movement came in Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. It was written in the 19th century, and the steampunk concept only appeared in 1987, but the novel features a submarine that's like way more advanced than everything that's possible to have at the time. So people say that he was a pioneer to the genre, but it is considered sci-fi. But we can spark a relationship. And there's a common theme with steampunk. Even though it's not really properly established as that, it has total relation to it. And about that difference between the cyberpunk and the steampunk that I was talking earlier. One key difference to both of these words is that while cyberpunk, everything is much pessimist about the society, the technology. There's this fear. The steampunk universe is a much more brighter dystopian. Everyone is so excited about those new machines that came to life, how technology is evolving. It's a much more brighter dystopian. Still dystopian, but much more brighter. Especially if you compare Those are two examples of cyberpunk cities. You can see they are big, with huge crowds, and if you compare to the steampunk city, it does have a totally different vibe. Totally different. Everything is much warmer, nicer. The theme is totally different, of course. Even though it has much pollution going on, it is painted in a brighter light. And now we must talk about some work that was influenced by the steampunk genre. And we have some animations right here that were all influenced by this universe. Some movies. Sherlock Holmes, for example, is like many people would not consider to be in the steampunk universe, but because it is set on the 19th century, and it's not that crazy, but it has highly advanced gadgets and stuff that kind of feels out of place in I'm talking about the movies. Kind of feels out of place in the 19th century. It is more advanced for the time, so it can be considered steampunk work. And for last but certainly not least, we have two video games. The first one is The Order, which was released a few years ago and depicts a steampunk London with werewolves. And the Bioshock franchise, which is clearly inspired by the... Actually, it takes place in a cyber steampunk world. The whole franchise is made. And that's the basis for the steampunk genre. And that's it. Thank you.